Good afternoon. Welcome to the Chicago Money Show. We help you get informed, feel engaged, and have fun with your finances. I'm your host, Bridget Sullivan-Mermel, and today we've got Dr. Preston Cherry with us, and we're going to be talking about life, money, balance, and we're taking your calls. So please call us at the number on the screen and we'll answer your questions. We're going to be talking about understanding the source of wealth and how to solve problems around money as they arise. And Dr. Preston Cherry is an expert in this. He's recently been named the head of the University of Wisconsin Green Bay's new financial planning program. He's got a PhD from Texas Tech, which is one of the top financial planning programs in the country. He's got his own financial planning practice, and he's got a podcast, Money Life Balance. And we're taking your questions, so call us at the number on the screen. So, Preston, welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So let's chop it up.
Let's chop it up, right? That's how we start the podcast all the time, is chopping it up.
Chop it up, yeah. So first, let's talk about money mindset. What do you consider the source of wealth?
Well, the source of wealth is, I like to start with self-worth, self-value, because those are the things that I carry with me that were instilled by my parents, because those are the building blocks that you can take in to help build mindset, because some of the things, if you don't have that fundamental base of self-worth, self-value, and that was intentional by my parents putting it into my sister and I, right? Then you don't have to untrain so much.
Right.
You don't have to untrain so much. And so, and I know we were, chopping up about environment a little bit, but, we have to, the less that we have to untrain and undo, the better. So if you can get those fundamentals of self early and consistently, then you're getting a head start.
Right.
Yes.
And it seems like some people have that head start, and then some people have even if you have that head start, there's still more to do on the topic. There's still the people that I know, it's like, oh wow, you can really take it even to another level.
Right.
But for people that don't, there's things they can work on. It's not a lost cause. It's not like, well, my parents didn't value me.
And it's continual.
Right.
It's continual. We're all trying to learn ourselves better and have this sense of self-wealth.
Right.
This self-wealth. And
interesting.
When we get into these places, then we're better prepared in order to receive information. Right. So we are being valued. We're being compassionate to ourselves, and then when people want to talk to us, and they lead with compassion. Like when I'm talking to students or you or the audience or my clients, right? I want to meet them where they are.
Right.
Right. I want to demonstrate authentic compassion, so they can be valued, be heard, so they can share their stories. And then when people open up, then that's when we start. Then we can start the process.
Make some progress, yeah.
Process, then progress.
But sometimes people are afraid of opening up and being vulnerable. Ooh. And let's talk about that with, in relationship with money. So people might need help, but they don't want to talk to somebody about it.
Yes.
Because they feel like if they talk to somebody, then they're putting themselves in a vulnerable position, and then that person might come back they might regret it later.
Right. And yes, because we all go through life to where we have opened up at times. Yeah. And then somebody wants to try to use that against us.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Or they're using it for, power,
whatever,
for good, not
right,
bad.
Right,
or
exactly,
for bad,
for
not good.
Purposes,
right?
Yeah.
And for whatever purposes. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to do that again.
Right.
And particularly on necessary topics. I try to reframe them and get away from the term difficult, Because if you label them difficult, then people just simply don't want to talk about them. It's kind of like head in the sand, right? So most conversations that you need to have are necessary.
Right.
They're necessary. They may not be comfortable. However, and particularly in couples, I mean, we find this out, if anybody's been in a relationship before, you may not like that particular conversation, but if you have it, then on the other end, there is something to be discovered and be realized if you do it in a healthy manner.
Yeah, with research that I've seen is that nobody likes to have conflict with their partner, right? It's a very kind of low pleasure situation, but it's high on meaning.
Oh, yes.
So people feel like they can come out of that feeling like meaning, and meaning is an important part of happiness. So even though it's not pleasurable, it can be very meaningful. And so sometimes you can delay that conversation because it's going to not be
right. But
if you think about the meaning,
but you're delaying you're delaying what you're going to receive on the other end,
right? And then you just
which is the feeling good. It is the transformational.
Right.
When you have something that needs to be addressed. All right. And I've experienced this myself before, and still do sometimes. We procrastinate and just don't want to do it, like you mentioned. However, when we process that and we're in the journey, it feels better than what we were doing or experiencing by simply starting.
Right.
Or even having the conversation. It's better because then you're closer to the transformation.
So one of the things that you talk about is a healthy self-audit.
Yes.
Which, of course, resonates with me because I'm into that stuff, but also I have an accounting degree and
the audit
CPA.
Part, right?
And it's like, it's all this audit stuff comes up when it's kind of like, I don't want to do it.
Right.
So tell me more about that.
Right. So it's an honest self-audit, and the reason why it's honest, it could be healthy too. It turns out to be healthy, but it's an honest self-audit, which is to be honest with yourself. Don't skirt around the lines or short-sighted. Meditate on it. Be one with yourself, because if you're honest about it, then the exercise or the process is more bountiful and plentiful.
So in a regular audit, you're looking at your assets and your liabilities, right? And you might be asking somebody else, like for verification.
Yes.
Like that's what you're doing. And I'm just talking as an accountant here.
Right. And it's applicable. It's applicable here too. It's like, okay, what am I? And there's 3 A's in this process, so people can have their aha moment, right? And we're in Chicago, right? So Oprah. Oprah used to have this thing where she used to go, "Oh, you want a car?" and all this type of stuff. It's kind of where I got that from. Is an aha moment. She's like, "Ah." So the 3 A's, right? Which is admit where we are, and that's where that honesty comes in. That courage to start. And then to say, okay, this is where I am, and know that you have to start. That's a big win in of itself.
Right.
And people are maybe watching and saying, okay, when are they going to start talking about money? But no, this is. It's like, okay, what is it that you're feeling right now? What are you doing that's uncomfortable for you, or that you don't want to be doing right now? What would you like to be doing better? What are your aspirations? Right. What are these things? And so if you are going through an honest audit and admitting that it's like, okay, this is not where I want to be. All right, I want to do something else. That admitting part, sometimes people just don't get there.
Right.
And
it can be hard.
Yes, it can be. And then the second part is to acknowledge how you feel about it. Those feelings, okay, let's process those. All right, it could be shame, it could be regret, it could be you may be judging yourself. You may not be able to forgive yourself. All right, but we're going to have to do that in order to get to the third stage, which is action. But in that middle stage, it is processing all of these. How do you feel about that, right? And getting through that. Then that action, it frees you at this point. It's like, okay, all right. And then when you provide yourself some forgiveness about where you think you are, and be like, okay, this is where I am. I've done that. Now let's move. And that's that action part. And then this is when the transformation starts.
Great. Well, it sounds like we've got a caller. Caller, thanks for calling. And if you can please give us your first name and the neighborhood you're calling from, and then continue with your question.
Hi, my name is Rob, and I'm calling from Bridgeport. And I have a question for, I was listening to your conversation on conversations, and I was just wondering, first of all, I'm getting married soon. I want to know if we have to discuss about having a joint bank account. Can you tell us the benefits of each having our own separate bank account or a joint one? And also, is there can you give us 5 topics that we need to discuss before we get married, either financially or give some advice about what conversations we should be having?
Oh,
Thank
yes.
It's great.
Oh, those are
this
good
is
ones.
Awesome. This is on my list.
Whoa.
Okay, go for it.
We're going to talk about that. Thank you for asking that question. Different. What was a show called Different Strokes for different folks, but how you run your money. However, those. Some people just like to have just one joint account,
right?
And that's that. It was kind of old school. Everybody put their money into the pot. Some people still do that to this day. However, having that joint account is where probably all the household money comes into your savings, your investments, and you dole all that out. Because you're approaching it at a macro level, the household level, right? Are those goals that you want to accomplish? If it's you and your spouse or your family, all those that comes in. Then when you have your other 2 separate accounts. Okay, you're not necessarily hiding money from one another, but that's your freedom fund. You don't have to explain.
Right.
You don't have to explain yourself to your spouse because it's already in that from that macro budget.
Right.
Right. Because that's a line item.
Right.
You've paid yourself.
Yeah.
You've paid the house. You've paid your goals. You've paid what you need to do. So you've allocated all those funds, and those line items are spouse 1, spouse 2.
Right. And I used to work with some people that had it set up so that if one person got a bonus, they would put some of the money into the joint, but then there would be an extra bonus for the spouse who got the bonus, and which makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
So, and they would put some extra in savings, and so they had thought through, okay, if extra money comes through, which account is this going in?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And see, what did you just say there? You said you talked about it beforehand.
Right.
Right. And so the caller was, what do we need to discuss before we get married? These are the type of things. First of all, you're going to have conversations like this ongoing.
Right.
Because you're going to continuously revisit. Because you're going to be married for a long
things
time.
Things are going to change.
Things are going to change. Things are going to be fluid.
Right.
So we need to have regular conversations about some check-ins. Check-ins, because we do have a life cycle. So different stages. Life has seasons.
Right.
So we're going to have to discuss about these things. So what you just said, which was there was a pre-plan on how that money came in. There was already a framework. We discussed that. That's right.
Yeah. So then when the money comes in, you don't have to worry or even negotiate it. So what about the top questions to be talking about before you get married?
Right. Well,
in regards to money.
Right. Well, start right there.
Right.
It's like,
it's great first question. Yeah.
Right. Let's start right there. Okay. How are we going to handle the finances, or how are we going to navigate that?
Yeah, I have one. I'm sorry, I've got to butt in. I used to work with another CPA, and he called somebody a quality spouse who didn't have credit card debt.
Okay.
He's like, you're getting married to a quality spouse. They don't have credit card debt. And whether or not they have credit card debt or not, that's a good thing to bring up before you get married. And what are we going to do about it? How do I feel about it? How do you feel about it? Yeah.
Right. Are we going to handle this jointly?
Right.
Right. School loans is another topic.
Right. It's a great topic.
How are we going to handle that? Some households have separate property that they've had with them, inherited from family.
Right.
Are we going to place that together? And there's no right or wrong.
Right.
It's how it fits to your family structure.
Right.
And so, but it's very important to talk or to address all of this before going in. That way, particularly early on, to where you're not having a discovery process after the fact so early.
Right.
Because what happens, what tends to happen is that if we don't talk about, even like talking about how you're going to raise children, how are you going to, what faith you're going to,
religion,
all
exactly.
of those things, you know, because there's dual faith households out there all day long. You just have to talk about it, right?
Right.
So, but if you don't, what happens when it arises and then that conflict and disagreement is inside and then elongates over time?
Right, it goes back to that difficult conversation just because I don't want to have it, and then it like...
Right. So, but it's very healthy. So just discussing how you're going to handle money, how you're going to handle property, how you're going to title certain things. You know, do we have to explain to one another how we spend our side money once it goes in there in those accounts?
I think another one is, what are your goals?
Absolutely.
Like, what are our goals? Do we want to buy a house? Where do we want to buy a house? What do we, or don't care about buying a house? Or
Well, everything doesn't have to be solved.
Right.
Beforehand.
It's the goal.
I mean, because there's, again, you have a life cycle. So it's just starting with those bases, because you're going to have conversations after you get married, because the house may not come for another 6 or 7 years. Right. So instead of talking about where we're going to live, you know, as far as the house is concerned, you may want to say, okay, who's going to be, how are we going to keep this house clean or whatever, you know, right?
That's a good one.
Pick up after yourself. Right. All these other. How are you going to live amongst one another? So what I mean by that is like, start small, even with money conversations. Right. How are we going to title the accounts?
How are we going to pay for dinner?
Right. We're going to use the joint money or whatnot. So how are we going to continue? I come back to school loans too. It's like
that's a good
that's a big one.
Right.
How are we going to address? That's a big one.
Yeah.
How are we going to address? Because it'd be 20, 30, 50, 100. How are we going to? How are you going to address that?
And it can be different for both people. So one person might have a lot, and the other person might have none. And so what do you do then?
Right.
Like.
But if you agree to tackle it on together, then that's addressed.
So what about people starting out? If somebody is just thinking about picking a job or career, what do you advise? Like, how do you tell them to start thinking this through? And if you can give me an example of like what happened to you, or that would be even better.
Oh, yes. Well, and I'm an educator as well. So I run a practice and I give speakings, but I talk to young people as well.
Right.
And I guess it's just fitting as far as career is concerned. Is first of all, I like what we discussed, which is you're not always going to love what you do straight out the gate.
Right.
You're not going to.
Right.
You're going to. It's a discovery process, like most things.
Right.
You're discovering what you aspire to do, what you like, and that just takes doing a little bit, you know. So when we have this input inside of us, so far as society is the first thing it says, okay, you have to love what you do. Okay, yes, eventually, yes.
Right.
All right. Also, too, for particularly for young people, have curiosity. Ask yourself, what is it that you want to do? Try different things, right? For me as an advisor to young people, as far as where they want to do with their lives, I don't press them in a certain direction. I offer them information for their consideration. What are you curious about? What are you curious about? And then, as far as careers are concerned, have something that you are going to enjoy grooming, into, building into. Because it is particularly those first few years, you are honing your craft, right? So those are some things. So those are considered before even the money. People should be paid what they're worth, no question about that. However, what is the other opportunity set?
Yeah, exactly. I know when I was in school and just got out of school, I was overly focused on how much was I going to make out of the gate. Honestly, like just to be brutally honest.
Right.
And then I was miserable.
How was the culture? That's what I'm asking too. Is like the culture is part of that package as well.
I liked the other people I worked with, but the let's leave it there.
Well, it's very important.
It didn't match me well.
See?
It was like very. The reason that you made a lot of money was because they really wanted to work a lot of hours. And that was not what I was wasn't that interested. Like so. That wasn't me, and so anyway, but it's a process of elimination. For me, it has been, but when I talk to people, I try to tell them to open it up. Like, don't think I got to make a lot of money right out of the gate. If you see potential, you're eliminating a lot of jobs by doing that. Although the job that I did have was a great foundation, it was a great training ground. It was very intense, great training ground. So I got a lot out of it. And I'm still friends with some of the people at the time. Okay. So you are president of the Financial Therapy Association.
Yes.
What is financial therapy?
Yes. So financial therapy, we've been talking a lot about emotions. And we are tied to our money emotionally.
Right.
Every day. I mean, every day we do something, it requires some money. I mean, we're having to buy food, we're having to put, if we're blessed with some air conditioning or whatever it is, lack thereof. So needs and also wants and aspirations.
Right.
We have to consider. All of that is okay. All of that. So
every time I get onto Google or social media, I have like buy signals. Like they're trying to get my emotions going. Like I need this, like whatever I browse, of course, so anyway.
Yeah, right, correct.
It's just emotional.
It is.
Like a very basic level, and it's,
So we have emotions, we're processing, so how do we think, how do we feel, our behaviors, our relational aspects. So, we have the big umbrella of financial psychology, and then we have these little pillars, which is, behavioral. You hear the words behavioral finance, which really started centered around our thoughts around investments, and then it's migrated to behavioral finance 2.0.
Right.
So it's in order to open it up to consider a lot more than just investments when you're talking about your feelings and your psychological aspect to money. Then we have financial therapy to your direct questions: think, feel, behave, emotion. So what you're doing is taking therapeutic and psychology aspects and theories, and the interventions and thoughts and theories, and integrating them with the financial aspects. How can we investigate ourselves, our relationships with money, okay, in order to inform what we're currently doing with our money and then what we want to do with our money. So it's informing that, and then hopefully we can have better outcomes by just not thinking about the facts and figures of the money alone.
Can you give me an example of some times where you've recommended it to people?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, so one way you can do it is you can have the tools and the techniques inside of a financial planning process.
Oh, okay.
And I practice that myself, using financial psychology, and particularly bits of financial therapy in particular. Using certain exercises and interventions in order to help facilitate these conversations. Because like we talked about earlier, which is some of these conversations are hard to have, or not necessarily hard to have, they just haven't been ignited in any way. Right? Or people want to have them, just haven't been asked, or don't know how to voice that.
Right.
So if you provide an environment, right, where people can talk, and you ask the right questions, you have the right exercise in order to bring about this information, right? Then you start processing, and then you have the information to go into what do you want to do next with your money and your aspirations. So you can build it into the financial planning process when you work with a professional, or you can have financial therapy on its own. And here's an example: financial couples therapy.
Right.
Okay. When there is a money conflict that you just simply, as a household, cannot get through. All right, and it's that dynamic. Okay, well then we need to address that on its own. All right, and you will need a financial therapist now. And when we say therapist, you're using therapeutic methods.
Right.
You're not necessarily. Sometimes you're not a licensed therapist, but some people are. Licensed marriage family therapist, and some people are practiced licensed therapists. All right, but the phrase financial therapy can be using therapeutic practices.
I see. Right. Okay.
Okay. So back to the point of where you're having that service offered to you, you're talking about dealing with something that needs addressing, outside of, say, a financial planning process. You're receiving a therapeutic process for that one thing.
Right.
You're talking couples conflict. You may be talking about money trauma.
Right. Right.
Right. That's providing a barrier to what you want to advance, what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
So you may be bringing some trauma in from early age.
Right.
Right. Maybe a scarcity mindset. We're talking about mindset. Well, how did that come about? How did that come about?
Right.
Right. And it may be so embedded that we need a framework and some time to directly address that, so we can then move on.
Interesting. So how do you talked about different seasons in your life. How do you recognize and give yourself permission to move if you're in one season and going to another? I'll give you an example. For me, when I had a tax practice, and I had always just wanted my own business.
Okay.
And so I thought I should be happy.
You should be. Yeah, right.
But then looking back on it, I realized, no, I just like learning all the time. And so I'm not going to be happy if I'm just doing the same thing over and over and over again for decades,
Okay.
And so, but it took me an extra 5 years to come to grips with that, only because of, just not really understanding myself. So how do you help people understand, like, okay, I know something's not right. What is it? And how do I give myself permission? What are your thoughts?
Well, that's what the professionals are there for.
Okay.
I mean, you did that on your own. Did you arrive at that point on your own? You said, okay, I want to do something different, or did somebody help you with that?
I did it on my own, but again, it took me way too long. Like looking back on it, some coaching. Or maybe financial therapy, because it would have been good. Okay,
so that's what that facilitates.
Right,
is to help unlocking that, giving that permission, and expediting that. So yes.
All right.
Kudos to you,
We have to wrap it up.
Yeah, kudos to you for getting through that, right? Well, and doing stuff like this.
People do, go through different seasons.
Yes.
Dr. Cherry, I want to thank you for being my guest. Now, if viewers want to find out more about you and your work, how would they do that?
Yes, you can find me all over social at DRs. That's Dr. Preston Cherry. So DR Preston Cherry all over the socials, and also my website is concurrentfp.com.
Great. And I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel, and I own the Family Financial Planning Firm here in Chicago. Check out the show's website at chicagomoneyshow.com. There you can see our earlier episodes, and you can sign up for our newsletter so that you get a heads up before upcoming shows. If you have questions on this episode or for future episodes, email us at ask@chicagomoneyshow.com. Thanks for tuning in.